I would say I am in the camp of somewhat meaningless. I think we're focused a bit too much on these numbers, especially given where we are today with the resurgence of the virus. So I think I do have concerns about reading too much into these numbers for what we should expect over the next few months.
Rick, or I'm sorry, Glenn, we haven't heard from you yet.
Well, I do think it's a good report, a little above what I would have expected as well. But it still says the economy is healing and healing at a slow rate, and which means two things. One, given the uncertainty, we need to focus on the virus first and foremost. And second, policy needs to take into account we don't really know exactly what the path of the unemployment rate or the jobs outlook is going to be. So we need policies that are flexible.
Okay, Steve, do you have, I see you're diligently, you're certainly not playing the guitar right now. You're working on some of the minutia here. What else do you see? And I hope you're not going to anger Rick in any way that gets anything started between you guys.
No, I wouldn't do that.
You're right next to each other down there. We may have to separate you two.
I'm always playing guitar, Joe, even if I don't have the guitar in my hand. I wanted to give you some of the detail. Service sector up 4.2 million. Leisure hospitality bringing a lot of folks back, 2.1 million. That was up 1.2 million on an unrevised basis. I wasn't able to look at the revisions to the prior month. Manufacturing doing well, up 356,000. Construction 158, and then retail up 739,000. Maybe one way to frame the debate is this. We know that in the interim period we've had a rise of infections and perhaps closings. I guess, and I'm interested in Glenn's thought on this, I'd prefer to start with more people being called back than fewer people being called back. Obviously, you do not want to have a situation of rehiring, but perhaps employers are going to be reluctant a second time to let people go. So the bigger this number, and we did get a good and big number this time around, the better it is perhaps to face the renewed round of infections.
I would certainly agree with that. And I think employers are cautious in where people are going back to work, in addition to whether they're bringing people back at all. And I expect that caution to continue, especially in metro areas and large office buildings. So it remains a cloud.
So, Andrew, you want in? You want to talk to someone?
It's weird that we continue.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Steve a question about the temporary workers. Oh, go ahead, Austin.
Why we continue to have these giant unemployment insurance claims is still kind of a puzzle, that we could have a strong employment report, even as if you look at the weeks from that reference week, we had high unemployment claims, and they're continuing. Is that just a backup in the systems in these states, or are we actually still having a lot of job destruction?
Well, let me actually take that, Austin, and pull it back on Steve, because I think there's two questions that are related that I have. One actually has to do with PPP loans and whether you think any of those jobless claims were people who brought people back on and then took them off again, or whether you think we're going to see that in the future. And related to all of this is, given how many people we now have back on the payroll, do you say to yourself that the unemployment rate in the United States is going to be a straight line in the right direction, or do you think that there's a point at which we get a group back, but then we persist at some level, given some of these other uncertainties in the economy and the health issues that we're seeing right now?
I'll take the last one first. I've been looking for a word for this, and Goldman came up with a good one. They're calling it scarring, and that's really the biggest interest that I have. I think you've had a massive number of people who were laid off. A massive number of people will come back. The delta here, the difference between what comes back and what left, is the scarring, or businesses didn't make it through this very difficult closing. Jobs that don't exist anymore because of the new adaptations we're going to make to the virus. That's the number I'm really interested in. These big flows are not surprising to me. I mean, obviously, you raise your eyebrows at 4 million plus jobs created, nearly 5 million. That's a big deal. We need to get everybody back in place to a sort of normal level to see what the scarring is underneath. The PPP will have a big effect. It seems to have brought people back on the workforce. And that raises the next question, of which this panel is eminently qualified to address, which is the kind of cliff that we're approaching. PPP runs out. Okay, they extended it to August 8th. The jobless claims or the extra jobless benefits run out. That's another issue. Additional fiscal spending will run out. And the idea that in July they're going to have to make some decisions as to whether or not they feel the economy is able to run on its own, or if it needs another, I want to say, several shots of adrenaline to keep going here and keep these good numbers going.